I never thought it would happen to me. The signs were there, of course, but love has a way of blinding you. My name isn't important, but my story might be, especially if you've ever had your heart shattered by someone you trusted completely. We met in college, Mark and I. He was the charming business major with that crooked smile that made my knees weak, and I was the quiet art student who somehow caught his eye at a mutual friend's party. Our beginning was like something straight out of a romantic comedy: accidental coffee spill, awkward apologies, and phone numbers exchanged with shaky hands. 3 years together felt like building a fortress, brick by brick, secret by secret, dream by dream. We moved in together after graduation. Got a small apartment with a view of nothing special, but it was ours. I painted the walls while he assembled furniture, cursing at IKEA instructions. We adopted a rescue cat we named Rembrandt because he had these paint-like splatters on his fur. Life was perfect. At least, that's what I thought. The change was subtle at first. Mark started working late more often. His phone would always be face down on surfaces. He became protective of his laptop. When I asked questions, he'd smile that crooked smile and kiss my forehead, telling me I was being paranoid. And I believed him because that's what you do when you love someone, you trust them. Until I couldn't ignore it anymore. That Tuesday evening is burned into my memory like a brand. I was doing laundry, something so mundane, when I found the receipt in his pocket. Dinner for two at a restaurant we had always talked about going to but never did. A restaurant that was definitely not the client meeting he told me he was at that night. My hands shook as I confronted him. I expected denial. I expected anger. What I didn't expect was the calm resignation on his face, like he'd been waiting for this moment, like he was almost relieved. I didn't mean for it to happen, he said, as if that made it better. As if that erased the 6 months he'd been seeing her, Jessica, his coworker, the one he'd assured me was just a friend, when I'd met her at the office Christmas party. The one who'd smiled at me with such warmth while knowing exactly what she was doing behind my back. The next few weeks passed in a blur of boxes, tears, and paperwork. I moved out because I couldn't bear to be in the space we had built together. Rembrandt came with me. Mark never really wanted a cat anyway. My new apartment was smaller, darker, and emptier. I filled it with the sound of sad songs and unanswered questions. Friends tried to help. They brought wine and takeout, offered shoulders and advice. "He's not worth it," they'd say. "You deserve better." Words that were true but felt hollow when all I wanted was for things to go back to how they were before the lies, before Jessica, before I knew what heartbreak really felt like. I became a detective of my own past, analyzing every moment, looking for clues I might have missed. Every late night at work, every text he'd hidden, every time he'd been emotionally distant. I tortured myself with the evidence, building a case against my own blindness. How could I have been so stupid, so trusting? The worst part wasn't even the betrayal, it was the loss of myself. Somewhere in those 3 years, I had slowly molded my life around his. My art, once my passion, had taken a backseat to supporting his career moves. My friendships had narrowed to mainly couples we knew together. Even my daily routines had shifted to accommodate his preferences. Without Mark, I wasn't sure who I was anymore. 2 months after moving out, I hit rock bottom. I found myself sitting on my bathroom floor at 3 a.m., scrolling through their social media profiles. They were official now, public, unashamed. There they were at that restaurant. There they were hiking, something Mark had always claimed to hate when I suggested it. There they were, happy in the aftermath of my devastation. I threw my phone across the room and watched as the screen cracked, a perfect metaphor for how I felt. And then, staring at that broken phone, something shifted inside me. A quiet voice whispered, "Enough." The next morning, I woke up and did something I hadn't done in months. I took out my sketchbook. My hands felt clumsy, my strokes uncertain, but I kept going. I drew what I felt, jagged lines, dark shadows, and eventually, a small spot of light breaking through. It wasn't good art, but it was honest. And it was mine. That small act became my first step toward reclaiming myself. I established a rule, one new thing every day that was completely, selfishly for me. Some days it was as simple as trying a new coffee shop. Other days it meant reconnecting with old friends I'd neglected. I signed up for a ceramics class I'd always been interested in but had put off because Mark thought it was messy. I started a journal where I wrote letters I would never send, not just to Mark or Jessica, but to myself. Letters of anger, forgiveness, and eventually understanding. I wrote about what I had learned, what I still needed to learn, and what I hoped for my future. Pages filled with raw emotion that slowly began to heal as the weeks passed. Rembrandt became my constant companion, judging me with his yellow eyes when I would slide back into sadness, purring against my chest on the nights when memories felt too heavy. Having another living creature depend on me kept me functioning on days when I might have otherwise stayed in BED-MY apartment slowly transformed. I painted the walls colors Mark would have hated. I hung art that spoke to me rather than match the furniture. I bought plants, so many plants, turning my small space into an urban jungle. Each one that survived under my care felt like a victory, proof that I could nurture life even when mine felt barren. 6 months after the breakup, I ran into Jessica at a coffee shop. My heart raced, and for a moment, I considered running out the door. But instead, I stood my ground. She approached me with caution, her eyes holding a mixture of guilt and curiosity. "How are you?" she asked, as if she had any right to know. I really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't expected. Not an evil homewrecker, not a scheming vixen, but just another flawed human who had made selfish choices. It didn't excuse what she'd done, but the realization drained some of the poison from my heart. "I'm getting better," I replied, surprising myself with the truth of those words. "Actually, I'm finding that I'm stronger than I thought." The conversation was brief and awkward, but walking away, I felt lighter. I hadn't forgiven her or Mark, but I was no longer giving them power over my happiness. That night, I created one of my best paintings in years, a swirling expression of release that would later become the centerpiece of my first gallery showing. As the 1-year mark of our breakup approached, I realized I had gone days, sometimes weeks, without thinking about Mark, without checking their social media, without feeling that stab of pain when I saw couples holding hands. I was busy with my art, with new friends from my ceramics class, with a life that was taking shape around my values and desires. I started dating again, cautiously, selectively. I had coffee with a writer who made me laugh. Dinner with a teacher whose passion for his work reminded me of what genuine enthusiasm looked like. None of these turned into serious relationships, but each one helped me remember that connection was still possible. That trust, while risky, was worth extending again someday. The healing wasn't linear. There were setbacks, birthdays, holidays, finding an old photo tucked in a book. But each wave of sadness became shorter, less overwhelming. I developed tools to ride them out rather than being pulled under. Then came the day when Mark texted me out of the blue. "Things didn't work out with Jessica," he wrote. "I've been thinking about us, about mistakes I made. Could we meet and talk?" 2 years ago, those words would have been everything I wanted to hear. A year ago, they would have thrown me into confusion. But now, sitting in my plant-filled apartment, with Rembrandt purring on my lap and paint under my fingernails from a productive day at my studio, I felt nothing but clarity. "No," I typed back. "I wish you well, but that chapter is closed." I didn't need closure from him. I had built my own. I had dismantled the fortress we created together and used those same bricks to construct something stronger, more authentic, a life that was truly mine. Looking back now, I can see that being cheated on wasn't the end of my story, it was the beginning of a better one. The pain forced me to face questions I had been avoiding. Who am I without a relationship? What do I really want? What will I never again compromise? Today, my art hangs in a small gallery downtown. I teach weekend workshops for other people looking to find their voice through creativity. My apartment is still small, but it's filled with light and color and the occasional fur ball from Rembrandt. I'm seeing someone new, someone who understands that my independence is not a threat but a strength. The betrayal will always be part of my history, but it no longer defines me. What defines me are the choices I made afterward, to fall apart completely and then rebuild myself, piece by piece, into someone I'm proud to be. Someone who knows that while love is always a risk, the greatest risk of all is losing yourself in the process. If you're in that bathroom floor moment right now, if you're scrolling through their photos with tears blurring your vision, if you're wondering how you'll ever feel whole again, I promise you, there is another side to this pain. And when you reach it, you might just find that the person you become is someone you never could have been without this breaking and mending. The truest love story isn't the one I had with Mark. It's the one I'm still writing with myself. And that's a relationship that, no matter what happens, will never betray me again.